Hello everyone. Today I want to talk about why I think you should learn a trade. If you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. Thank you. So when I was in high school, I was kind of more so, if I had to categorize myself as a certain clique, I'd probably say it was kind of more on the hipster side of things. And when I was 16, I had gotten my first car. I was 15 or 16. And it was a 79 Oldsmobile Cutlass. The Cutlass had a carburetor issue. And I had a job, part-time job, working at a grocery store. And where I live in the United States, the winters get below zero very regularly. So not having a car meant I would have to walk myself to work in the winter. So not having a vehicle was kind of a bad deal, especially where I lived. So I didn't know anything about carburetors. I didn't know anything about cars, really. I didn't take any shop classes. I didn't really have a dad around to show me stuff like that. So I didn't know what was going on with it. There, my car just had to sit without any way of fixing it. I couldn't afford to bring it to a mechanic. I didn't have any resources to get it physically there as far as paying a tow truck. And I remember going to my high school and sitting around the table with some of my other hipster friends, and I was like, have you ever realized we don't know how to do anything? It kind of went completely over all their heads. I think the reason why it might have went over their heads is because I think a lot of their kind of socioeconomic background was a little different than mine, where they probably had parents that would just be able to hire somebody to fix it. So their whole entire life, if something went wrong in their house or with their vehicle or whatever, they could just bring it to their mom and dad's attention, and then their mom and dads could afford to hire somebody to come show up to their house and fix it. That was not my situation. So it was up to me to go and be the master of my own destiny and fix it. But I didn't know how. So I remember that feeling of just helplessness and uselessness, that, I had skills in other areas. I was a musician. I was, somewhat charismatic enough to where I had a handful of friends anyway. But I didn't really know how to do anything as far as fixing things, building the more practical side of life. That situation I found myself in definitely paved my path towards becoming an electrician. After my engine flooded, so that was probably my sophomore year of high school. My junior and senior years, I signed up for as much shop classes as I could. I went to auto shop class where I was replacing my brakes, I was packing wheel bearings, replacing my wheel bearings in my vehicle, learning all about car batteries, how to test your car battery, how to replace it, how to do basic vehicle maintenance. I also signed up for home ec and child development classes, fax classes, learned how to sew, learned how to cook, do laundry, change a diaper. I felt that what life prepared me to be wasn't an adult. It was basically, the way I saw it as is, everything around me was built to keep me perpetually adolescent for as long as possible. Working with my hands, doing the more hands-on classes, that eventually led me to picking a career to be an electrician. For my first point, the reason why I think you should learn a trade is because you will become useful. Learning a trade is extremely useful, even if you only do it for a few years. The skills you learn during those few years will forever be applicable to the rest of your life. You don't want to be the person that doesn't know how to mount their TV to a wall, and then you have to call a friend who actually has the tools and know how to do something as simple as that. When I first started dating my now wife, her dad my father-in-law now, is a roofing contractor. And at the time, I was out of trade school and I was working full-time as an apprentice electrician. She was on the phone with her dad. I never met the man yet. And she said, "Hey dad, my new boyfriend's an electrician." And his response was, "Good, put him on the phone." I was on the phone with him, troubleshooting a sump pump. His sump pump was bad, so it tripped the breaker. So he wanted me to see if it was an electrical issue or if the pump was bad. So I just disconnected the pump, turned the breaker back on, and it held. So I was able to isolate the problem that it is indeed the pump, and told him he needs a new sump pump. And that was before I even met him. So that's the situation you want to be in meeting your father-in-law. You don't want to show up and be like, "Oh great, look at this jabroni." You want to be the guy that before you even meet this guy, he's already finding utility in what you bring to a family. Especially these days, we need to stick together as much as we can. We need to help each other out as much as we can. And having a high demand skill that is specialized and most people need is a good situation to be in, opposed to you're the one who calls somebody else for help. You want to be the person that people call for help. Next point I want to make why I think you should learn a trade, or why I think learning a trade is a good idea, is because trade work is something real. Now, that might sound a little too poetic, but what I mean by that is that you physically get to see the results of your labor when you go to work as a tradesperson. When you're doing a run of conduit and you see before you started the day that there's nothing on the ceiling, and then all of a sudden you see your pipe on the end of the day and it looks nice and you're pulling wire through, and then eventually you wire up switches and lights to it and you get to turn on the light and you see the lights turn on. You get to directly see what you did at work, opposed to maybe a more white collar computer job where, let's say you're working at a call center where you're just waiting for a call to show up and you take it and you put the phone down and you leave work. Your office looks the same exact way it did when you started work than when you ended it. Your life can kind of seem like it's a Groundhog's Day situation where it's just day in, day out doing the same thing over and over again. When you're on a construction site, you get to see the pulse and the evolution of a building, as well as, typically from my experience, it's just going to vary throughout different trades, different types of construction you're in. But from my experience, I was never really on a job longer than a year. So even if you didn't like a particular project, you'd probably be gone in a few months anyway when it was done. So I would say that the benefit of being able to touch and see what you actually accomplish in a day is nice. Also, when you drive around your community, it's kind of fun to do. It's almost a meme, kind of like a dad joke, but it's kind of fun to drive around and say, hey, I wired that bank, or I was on that hockey arena project for 3 months, and you get to drive around town. You get to see the parking lot lights you put in. You get to see the electric signs you wired up, showing the gas prices or different ads, and you remember pulling the wire into that conduit, terminating everything with snowflakes coming down or whatever you had to go through to get that to happen. You remember that, and being able to see that in your community is pretty satisfying. My next point I want to make why I think you should learn a trade is it does make you stronger. I was always kind of a scrawny dude, especially in high school. I weighed like 115 pounds or something like that, and I'm 5'9". So I was always smaller. It's a different kind of muscle you gain from actually doing work. I've seen a few different health and fitness forums where they want you to pick up a log and run around in the forest or something to try to simulate maybe what our ancestors had to go through from working day in and day out. I would argue it's a pretty recent development in the history of humanity that we're just at a desk all day sitting. For the most part, we were constantly walking and traveling and lifting and bending and working with our hands. And you just get different muscle groups. You get shoulders, you get triceps from working overhead a lot as an electrician in my case. You get hand muscles. Also, working in the trades does kind of give you a certain degree of grit, some perseverance, knowing that you can get into a situation that might seem like it's hard work, and then you accomplish it and you do it, and you learn to trust yourself that, hey, I am tough enough to do something like that, let's say. So physical strength and grit is definitely a benefit of learning a trade, opposed to, let's say, more white collar work. This is probably the reason that you've heard outsiders talk about why you should learn a trade, and that is the financial side of things. It is something that you can provide for yourself and even a family with. I know for myself, I put my wife through college, even though we had a toddler at the time, with her graduating with no student loan debt. We bought our first house when we were in our mid-20s. We don't have any consumer debt. We don't have any car payments, things like that, that I was able to accomplish from knowing how to budget and then having a good income as a tradesman. I would say the tides are kind of changing as far as maybe 30 years ago, construction trades weren't paying as well when the demand was lower and the supply was higher. But now we have a high demand and a low supply of the trades. So that means that's good for anyone getting into the trades because wages are going to be high, jobs are going to be abundant, the prices of those services are going up over time. Another huge part of learning a trade that I appreciated a lot is the people I met along the way. It's kind of a cliche to say that, but you do meet some characters. Construction can kind of be a pirate ship at times, meaning that you could be around somebody who's super clean cut, doesn't swear or cuss at all, very organized, and then you can be next to somebody that perhaps just got out of prison. So you could be around all sorts of types, which I personally love, being around all different sorts of people. The personalities you are around on construction can be colorful. It can be a social thing since you are working in crews, you get to work along people, opposed to perhaps working in a little cubicle, being isolated from everyone else. And the last point I want to say that I think you should learn a trade is the stories you can tell. You'll see some good things, some bad things on job sites. You'll have projects that go well. You'll have projects that won't go well. All those create fun stories to tell. I know my wife or my friends or other people that aren't into trades, they've always enjoyed my stories I've been able to tell from certain job sites or certain people I've worked with. So there you have it, everyone. That's why I am happy I learned a trade. That's why I would recommend anyone to learn a trade, even if it's not something that maybe you do for the rest of your life, even if it's something you're doing through college or something you do throughout your 20s or something you want to try after working, maybe a more white collar job, and maybe you're getting sick of being in the office all the time. You want to get out and do something and you're trying it in your 40s. I think that anyone and everyone should learn a trade and become useful. Thanks, everyone.